Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us here at Earth and Sky. We have kittens in our room, so if I get a little bit distracted, it's the little ones that are running around, running amok among us. And so that actually can play into our talk today a little bit as well, especially if the camera falls, because what we're talking about today is failure. And so there are many different ways to handle failure. There are many ways to handle success as well. How do you view that in your life? How do you feel when you do what society considers a failure? Do you think of it as a failure? Do you think of it as a stepping stone? Before we get into that too much, I'm just going to pull this forward so we don't drop the camera. And ask you to please like our Facebook page if you haven't already. Like our Facebook page, subscribe to us on YouTube, and you might see more of these little cuties running around in the future. This is Mystery. We've also been kind of nicknaming her Mystery Moon Magic. I'm not sure if that's what her parents will call her when they get her, but I'm for sure Mystery is her name. And Titania is the other one you might see today on video possibly. So failure. This was actually a viewer request to talk about, and it's something we all deal with in life. We all grow up starting with failure. That failure is really our stepping stones. So if you go back even as far as when you were first learning how to walk, you didn't master walking the first time you tried to walk. You had a lot of failed attempts. You might not remember that far back. Even with crawling, babies will try to kind of rock back and forth because they want to move around, and it takes a while to learn how to crawl, and it takes even longer to then learn how to walk. And so there are a lot of steps that you figure out and you navigate. So as someone is starting to learn how to walk, they are learning the ins and outs of what it means to stand up. They're learning how it feels when you fall down. And sometimes that can hurt a little bit in the process. Yet children don't just give up just because they fall down. They don't say, oh, that hurt, I'm never going to walk again. They get right back up and they try again. And sometimes as parents, we'll be right there to help hold them and lift them up as they start to walk. And quite often as parents, though, we will be wanting to help them walk, and then you're sitting and doing something and you suddenly notice, oh my gosh, they're taking their first steps all on their own because they learned through failure first and they didn't get down on themselves. They learned the ins and outs of it and how to walk. Same thing with talking. There are many different levels of talking and learning how to talk. And purring, many different ways, many different types of talking. And even when you're learning foreign languages, you're going to mix up some words initially when you're starting to learn to talk. There are some interesting mix-ups that sometimes can happen when you're starting a new language if you're among people that are proficient in the language. Yet if you learn to just laugh it off, figure out what the actual meaning is and what you're talking about, then you're going to get better through that experience, and you can actually learn to enjoy those experiences through failure. And when we go to school, we learn several things as we start going to school and we figure out what it is we're doing. When you take tests when you're in school, you initially are not going to succeed perfectly at everything. But when you take a test, you don't see every wrong answer as a failure. Hopefully you don't see every wrong answer as a failure. You learn that as a stepping stone. So then you learn the right answer and you figure out how to move forward with that. I even had some failed attempts at breathing when I was really sick. I know that there were periods of times where my autonomic system wasn't quite working, so it went down to even that deep level of breathing where I had to relearn how to breathe. I had gone through a period of about 8 years of a deep sickness, and I had to relearn how to walk. I had to relearn how to communicate. I had to relearn in some ways how to breathe. Actually my husband programmed a meditation that I would listen to at night that said, breathe in, breathe out. And it helped me to remember to breathe in and breathe out. There were a lot of blonde jokes in that, but it worked. And I didn't get frustrated over it. It was just another learning experience. And then it seems as we get older, we all have that pliability and that forgiveness as kids. We know that we're just in the process of learning. We're in the process of growing. And as adults, when you look at kids, you know they're learning. You know they're learning to walk. You don't say, oh, how can you not stand up? You say, oh, you're learning, you're getting it, you're getting there. Yet then we get older and we start to have jobs, and we have these expectations, and we need to do our jobs well, and we want to learn things well, and we want to look like we're doing, like we know what we're doing when we're in front of people. And we start to at some point get down on ourselves, and we start thinking, oh my gosh, I just messed up at my job. What's everybody gonna think? Oh my gosh, did my boss realize I made a mistake? The world is coming to an end. And it's not. The world is not coming to an end, because we all make mistakes in a lot of different levels every day in our lives. There are car accidents, and they're called accidents because we learn things through them. We don't mean to have experiences where we mess things up. We don't mean to have life get messy, but it does, and there's a lot that we can learn through it. So when it seems like there comes this point where we suddenly put so much expectation on ourselves, and we don't want to fail, and we don't want to let people down, and we don't want to let ourselves down. It seems like for some people the motivation is not letting themselves down. For others, it's not letting other people down. But when we can get past that, and when we can start to realize it's not about letting anybody down, it's about learning through the process. What did you learn when things didn't go your way? What did you discover when things didn't go your way? When you fail, it starts to give you insight. And so when you're just learning how to drive, a lot of times when you're first starting, you might take a corner in a little bit too close, and you might clip a curb, and that's going to send your heart rate up for just a second, like, oh my gosh, that was the curb. And then you learn, oh, maybe I'll stay in my lane a little bit more, maybe I'll take the corner a little bit wider. But without those failures, without realizing what happens, it's harder to really learn those lessons and to figure out, are you going to fall asleep? It's harder to figure out exactly what you're doing. And it's when you fail that you start to learn the ins and outs of things. It's when you start to learn the edges. Sometimes they're sharp edges as you're failing and you're learning. You start to see the guts of something as you fail, and as you start learning the intricacies of it. And learning to drive, if you first are getting close to maybe accidentally running a red light, and your heart starts to race, and you realize, oh, that wasn't yellow as long as I thought it would be. And maybe you see some reactions from other drivers around you that tell you, yeah, you might not want to run that yellow light that turned red a little sooner than you want. And your heart rate goes up, just like a lot of times when you realize that you fail, that heart will start to go up, or your mind starts to race, and you start to figure out what's happening. And then hopefully things work out, and hopefully you don't have an accident, but it's a teaching moment then, because then you start to realize, oh, I can figure out my timing a little bit better, and you start to work on that. And another big important thing with failure is your reaction matters. The reaction, you can go a lot of different ways when you have a reaction. You can have a peaceful reaction and realize, oops, that's okay, and then you move on and you realize, oh, I made it through the light. I'll try not to do that again. But you realize peacefully that you can proceed forward. And maybe when you have an accident, or you see somebody else starting to have an accident and they run through the red light, maybe you can start to learn to have a more peaceful reaction to them as well. And sorry. So maybe you can start to learn to have a more peaceful reaction with them. And that was our other kitten in here, Titania. It was not an earthquake. So, and learning to find peace not only with your own failures, but with other people's failures as well. And learning to have peace so that if you see somebody doing something accidental while they're driving, instead of yelling at them or really, letting them know how wrong they were and how they shouldn't do that, have a little peace, have a little bit of compassion. If you need to honk to let them know to avoid danger, then certainly do that. But do it in a peaceful manner. And then find that peace for yourself as well. So if you are experiencing things, whatever type of experience it is that you're having in life, where you need to go through some of these failures and you need to experience it, because that is the learning process. Have peace, have some compassion, have some grace for yourself within the process too. And that's really going to make a big difference. If you're with somebody and they're starting to experience something that feels like failure, have a more peaceful reaction to them. And so if you're in the car and you see them starting to veer into something, peacefully, calmly, and clearly state that they need to pay a little bit of attention. Don't scream and grab the wheel. That will startle them. Then you're overcorrecting and then you're all over the road. And that's an easy analogy to see for the rest of life as well, because if you see somebody and they're starting to head in the wrong direction, and maybe it's a decision within their life, or maybe it's something about business, and you feel like they're about to careen off the wrong path, peacefully, calmly, clearly let them know what you're seeing, gently, with compassion, without the need to push them into making the decision you want them to make, because everybody can make their own decisions. And if they choose an option where you're afraid it's going to lead to failure, know that that's a lesson that they can learn in that, and be there to compassionately and gently help them as they get through that situation. Don't yell and scream and try to grab the wheel of life from them, trying to point them in your own direction. And one of the other things that is really important to know is, if you feel like you wish you never failed and you just wish everything was always perfect, and you just don't understand why we have to have this situation of failing, and you just want to always lead to success, well, if you think about it, if everything was always successful and nothing was ever failing, then you're not really learning a whole lot either. And so if you feel like you're in the position where you never fail and things are just always very smooth for you, then maybe it's time to start learning something new and to figure out some other way to start expanding yourself, because really it is through failure, through falling down and getting back up, seeing the guts of the things, that's how you really learn, and that's how you can really grow and expand in life. And that's the whole point of this life, is to grow and to learn and to expand. I saw a graphic just recently. It was actually the same day somebody requested I talk about failure. I think our whole set might come down around us. She's really trying to show what failure can look like. Tornadoes. But this graphic that I saw really illustrated it so perfectly, because it showed somebody and he was bent forward with his head down and his arms above his back, holding all of these bricks, and every brick said, yeah, if you could maybe not let her jump on there. Thanks. And every single, oops, I think we got this turned around here too. Make sure that's, hopefully I'm still straight there. So, and every single brick on his back, as he was holding these bricks above his back, said fail on it. And so it was as though he was being crushed by the weight of failure with all of these bricks, and he was holding them up. He was choosing to hold them, but he felt like it was pushing him down. And I know a lot of you have probably felt like that at times, like the failures that you've been through are just crushing you. Maybe you've been through a series of them. Sometimes we go through these phases of a long string of failures, and it just becomes overwhelming and this crushing load. How can you possibly get out from under that? Well, the other graphic that was attached to it showed another guy, same amount of bricks, but instead of holding them above, letting that weight go down, he was building a staircase of them. And so he had all of those same bricks, and each one said fail, but he was building the staircase, and he was climbing the staircase as he went. So build on your failures. Use those as a bridge. Create a bridge to success by learning from your failures, and be proud of them. Be proud of those moments where you learned through your failures. And sometimes it might feel like it was a clear thing that maybe you should have known better. Maybe you should have done better But that's not always the case. Sometimes we have to go through those lessons and learn. We're humans, we're on this planet, we're physical for a reason to learn a lot of different things. And we're not masters of everything that's physical, because how boring would it be if we were just perfect at everything all the time? So as soon as you start feeling that way, like I said, it's time to start learning something new, expanding and growing out further. And if you have a really tall staircase, that can look pretty magnificent. Have you seen the big houses with the tall staircases? That's great. You're building your mansion out of those failures, and you're rising higher to new levels with a whole lot under your belt at that point. Let's see. And everything about your character really can be understood about how you react to failure. It really shows a lot, especially when you're in public, when people are watching you and they're seeing those failures. How you react and how you respond to that matters, and it really can be a great window for you to see inside yourself. So if you're out and you're walking with a whole bunch of your friends and you trip and you fall flat on your face, how you react in that situation says a bit about who you are. If you immediately jump up and you just kind of laugh it off or brush it off, or even if you have to kind of get up slowly depending on what the situation is, but you're calm about it, you take responsibility for it, you roll with it. Maybe you have friends that will tease you about it, or maybe you have friends that will be really compassionate about it. Either way, if you are one that rolls with it and you just move forward and you dust yourself off and you figure out what you're going to do from there, but you're calm about it, that says a lot about yourself. Learn to laugh off things like that. And if you're somebody instead who gets really angry and you look around and you're trying to blame somebody or figure out what it was that caused it, and you're going to just get angry and blame it and make kind of a big scene about it, then there's maybe some other things you can learn about finding peace within your nature, peace within your character. And that doesn't apply just to, it can apply to any situation, whether you're falling, whether you're making a mistake and everybody in the office sees the mistake that you made. How do you respond to that? Do you respond where you're really beating yourself up and you're critical and you're upset about it? Or do you respond knowing that nobody's perfect and anybody could be susceptible to either falling or making a mistake, or whatever the situation is? None of us are perfect as people. And if you recognize that nobody is better or worse than you, and that you have just the same adaptability to fail and to succeed and to learn and to grow, then you can really start to follow that through and build your character in those moments. And it's in those tough moments sometimes. Sometimes for people it's when they're behind closed doors that they find it a little bit harder to keep that peace and composure. And for others, they find it harder when they're in a group of people. So examine your life and think about where it would be hard for you to have those moments where you maintain peace, and where would you find it a little bit easier, and look at those examples as ways that you can start to grow yourself as well, and how you can learn to not view your failures as failures in a bad way, but see those as great learning curves, great moments where you continue to climb up the ladder, reaching success. And so as you start reaching new successes and you start to feel like life is flowing really well, then figure out what else you want to learn. What else do you want to get into? What else can you examine so that you can see all the intricacies, all the ins and outs of it? People that are mechanics are always digging into cars and getting into the guts and the engine and the all those parts and works and wheels and all of that within the cars. And they have a lot of mistakes that they make along the way as they're learning about all of those working wheels and parts. And that is the same thing within all of our lives. We all have so many facets to us, so many parts of our lives, so many things that we're learning and doing, and facets of our character and who we are. And so as you start to learn about those, and you start to realize that our failures are just stepping stones, and you can have peace with those stepping stones, and that you can learn through it, and starting to embrace that, knowing that if you reach those failures and you find a way to have peace with it, and you just brush yourself off and you get up and you move forward and you try it again, and you don't give up just because you failed, but you get out there and you try again, and you have more determination and you're more excited, and you know that that one thing that you did, you're not as likely to do that. You might mess up in a different way, but then you're going to learn about a new example of it and then keep moving forward and keep bridging forward. So I hope you can learn to not have failure crush you with its weight, but instead use it as building blocks. Bridge yourself, raise yourself up and forward, and keep moving forward in life, knowing that your failures can stack underneath you to raise you higher. And you can use that in all aspects of your life: relationships, health, career, learning to rest and relax too. Sometimes for some of us it's hard to learn that, and we end up failing by pushing ourselves too hard, and so then we have to learn where our limits are. You know, failure can show up in so many different ways. It's unique for everyone, and I hope that each and every one of you can start to learn to create your own bridge, create your own staircase, and find your own path, because truly what life is about is learning, it's improving, it's growing and bettering ourselves. And I will leave you with that today. I hope that provokes some thoughts within you and helps you to delve deeper into your character, bring out some peace, some forgiveness, and some light within yourselves. We would love it if you would like this video, and if you want to share it with your friends. And as always, we are open to any suggestions for life talks as well. And if you want to join us in person, we do typically do a meditation at the end of our discussion after the life talk too. So have a great week, everybody.